The moon was a silent, gray prison of rock. It hung in the void, circling a giant planet wrapped in rings of ice and dust. The sky was always black, and the stars were sharp points of light that never twinkled. There was no air to make them shimmer. The only sound was the hum of machines and the soft hiss of air moving through vents. This place had no official name. The people who worked there called it Project Jormungandr. It was the most important and most secret place in all of human space. A young man named Jin stood on a metal platform, looking down at a giant structure. It was a long track made of a strange, dark metal. It stretched across the entire wide crater from one end to the other. This was the Railgun. Jin's hands were covered in grease and his dark hair was messy. He had not slept well for many days. His eyes, however, were sharp and clear, fixed on the machine. The alignment is perfect, he said to himself. His voice was quiet, but it carried in the still air. A young woman named Mina sat at a console a few meters away. Her fingers danced over glowing screens, checking numbers and graphs. The capacitors are holding their charge. Better than the simulations predicted. She tried to sound calm, but a small thread of excitement was in her voice. She was the one who made all the computer systems talk to each other. Without her, the Railgun was just a big piece of silent metal. They were a good team. Jin understood the bones and muscles of the machine, the physics, the metals, the power. Mina understood its brain and nerves, the code, the electricity, the data. A low rumble announced the arrival of a crawler vehicle. It moved slowly over the rough ground. The door opened and an older man stepped out. This was Mr. Park, the director of the project. His face was tired, and his shoulders were bent as if carrying a heavy weight. He walked over to the platform and stood next to Jin, looking at the Railgun. "It is a sight," Mr. Park said. His voice was rough. "To think we built this with scraps and stolen moments. For 1,000 years, humanity had not been masters of the galaxy. They were its workers, its servants. The Galactic hegemony, an alliance of ancient alien races, allowed humans to live among the stars, but only if they followed strict rules. The hegemony gave them technology, energy shields, plasma engines, communication devices, but they never gave them the knowledge to build it themselves. If a human ship broke down, a hegemony technician would come to fix it, never explaining how. Humans were not allowed to invent. They were only allowed to use. Any human world that tried to build its own advanced technology was punished. Sometimes with blockades, sometimes with bombs from space. Project Jormungandr was different. It was not based on hegemony technology. The idea was old, from Earth's own history. A railgun. Use magnets to push a metal object so fast that when it hit something, the force alone would do incredible damage. No lasers, no plasma, just simple, brutal speed. The hegemony thinks this idea is primitive, Jin said, not taking his eyes off the rail. They call it caveman physics. They are afraid of what they do not understand, Mina replied from her console. Their weapons are complex. We can make this simple, and simple is hard to break, Mr. Park sighed. They are not afraid of the weapon, Jin. They are afraid of the mind that thought of it. They have kept us in a small box for a millennium. They believe the lid is sealed, but they have never seen human stubbornness. They have never seen what happens when you put us in a corner and tell us we cannot get out. Jin thought about his grandfather, who had worked on a hegemony freighter, cleaning plasma conduits he was not allowed to understand. He thought about his mother, who farmed algae on a space station, using hegemony nutrients she could not replicate. This railgun was not just a weapon. It was a key to the box Mr. Park talked about. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing alarm cut through the quiet. A red light flashed on Mina's console. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Jin asked, his body tense. "A gravitic signature," she said, her voice tight. "Just appeared at the edge of the system. It's a hegemony patrol frigate." The Silent Judge. The three of them stood frozen. The Silent Judge was known. Its captain was strict, and its ambassador, a Voran named Kale, was especially cruel to humans. He enjoyed reminding them of their place. "They are not due for a check for another 3 months," Mr. Park said, his voice a low growl. "They must have detected our last power test," Jin said. The energy spike from the capacitors. On the main view screen, a communication window opened. The face that appeared was not human. It was long, with skin of greenish-gray scales that shimmered. Its eyes were large and completely black like pools of oil. There was no nose, just 2 slits. This was Ambassador Kale. Unauthorized energy signatures detected from your sector. Designated Outpost Theta 79. Kale's voice was smooth and cold, like a stone from a riverbed. The output is consistent with prohibited reactor technology. Explain this breach of the technological accords. Mr. Park stepped forward, squaring his shoulders. He was now the director, not the tired dreamer. Ambassador Kale, this is a surprise. The signatures are from new geological survey equipment. We are mapping deep moon rock. The power requirements are high, but it is all within our licensed energy allowance. It was a weak lie, and they all knew it. Kale's black eyes seemed to swallow the light. Do not insult my intelligence, Director Park. Your survey equipment reads like a weapons test. The Galactic hegemony does not tolerate independent development. It is a disease we cut out. A scouting drone is en route to your location. You will prepare all your facilities for a full compliance inspection. You will disarm any and all unauthorized systems. The screen went dark. The silence that followed was heavier than the moon's gravity. A drone will be here in 6 hours, Mina reported, her voice a whisper. If they see the railgun, they will call the frigate. The frigate will glass this moon from orbit. Everyone here will die. The project will be erased, Mr. Park said. He looked old and defeated. Jin looked from Mr. Park's tired face to Mina's fearful one. Then he looked back at the railgun. His machine. Their key. No, Jin said. The word was simple and solid. Jin, Mr. Park began. No, Jin said again, louder. We are not going to disarm. We are not going to let them inspect. We have a weapon. We will use it. It's not ready, Mina argued, standing up. The cooling systems aren't finished. If we fire it now, the magnetic coils could tear themselves apart. We could destroy the whole base. And if we don't, the hegemony will destroy us for sure. Jin shot back. This is why we built it, Mina. For this moment. To stand up. To stand up and die in an explosion? She yelled. Enough. Mr. Park's voice cut through their argument. He was looking at Jin, but his eyes were seeing something else, something far away. He was remembering a lifetime of bowing his head. He looked at the railgun, a human idea built by human hands. He made his decision. Jin is right, Mr. Park said, his voice quiet but firm. We have spent too long following their rules. Today we make a new one. He turned to Mina. Can you target the drone? Not to hit it. A warning shot. Close enough to make them see. To make them understand what we have. Mina looked at the two of them. The fire in Jin's eyes. The resolve in Mr. Park's. She took a deep breath and sat back at her console. Her fear was still there, but it was now covered by a layer of steel. I can plot an intercept course, she said, her fingers already moving. It will use a lot of power. The base will go dark. But yes, I can make the shot, Jin nodded, a fierce light in his eyes. He turned and ran towards the main control hub for the railgun. It was time to wake the giant. On the view screen, a small blip appeared moving toward them from the frigate. The scouting drone. It was small and fast, a symbol of the hegemony's endless watchfulness. On the moon, Jin and Mina worked faster than they ever had. Alarms were silenced. Power was rerouted from life support, from lights, from everything non-essential. All of it was fed into the giant capacitors along the railgun's track. The deep hum of the machine grew louder, becoming a vibration they could feel in their bones. The air smelled of ozone and hot metal. The rulers of the galaxy were coming to punish them for the crime of thinking. But in the silent, airless dark, humanity was about to give its answer. The silence in the control room was heavy and deep. The only sounds were the frantic tapping of Mina's fingers on the console and the low, growing hum of the railgun's capacitors charging. The red light of the alert was still flashing, painting their faces in pulses of emergency. Jin stood at the main power station, his eyes fixed on a large screen showing energy levels. The numbers climbed slowly but steadily. He could feel the vibration through the soles of his boots. The entire base was a heart, and the railgun was its pounding beat. They are charging their main weapon, Mina said, her voice tight. She pointed to a new data stream on her screen. The frigate. It's a low-level power-up. A warning. They know we are not standing down. Mr. Park stood between them, his face a mask of stone. He watched the scouting drone's icon move closer on the tactical display. It was a small, sharp triangle of light, inching toward the moon. How long until the drone is in range for a clear visual scan? He asked. 47 minutes, Mina answered immediately. Once it gets that close, its cameras will see the railgun for what it is. The game is over. Then we have 47 minutes to fire a shot they will never forget, Jin said. He did not look away from his screen. Mina, I need you to route all non-critical power to Section 4. The magnetic sequence there is weak. It needs more juice, Mina worked quickly. With a few commands, the lights in the hallway outside the control room went dark. The steady hum of the air recyclers quieted to a whisper. The only light now was from their screens, and the only sound was the dangerous hum of the railgun. On the main communication screen, Ambassador Kale's face appeared again. His black eyes seemed to absorb the dim light of the room. Your continued power generation is an act of defiance, Director Park. Kale's voice was like ice. You are forcing our hand. The drone will now perform an active scan. If we detect any weapon systems, the silent judge will be authorized to use orbital force. This is your final chance. Surrender and disarm. Mr. Park took a step toward the screen. He stood up straight, the weariness gone from his posture. He was no longer a servant of the hegemony. He was the director of Project Jormungandr. Ambassador Kale, Mr. Park said, his voice clear and strong. We are conducting a test of a new propulsion system. The energy signatures are unstable. For the safety of your drone, I must advise you to keep it at a distance. It was a bold lie. A challenge. Kale's scaly lips tightened. A propulsion system? You expect me to believe that? Your lies are as pathetic as your technology. The inspection will proceed. The screen went black again. He's not backing down, Mina said. He was never going to, Jin replied. They never do. How long until the capacitors are at firing capacity? 20 minutes, Mina said. But Jin, the cooling systems are not online. The heat from one shot could warp the guidance magnets. We will only get one chance. After that, the railgun might be useless. One chance is all we need, Jin said. He finally turned to look at her. Can you make the shot? Can you put a projectile close enough to that drone to scare them without hitting it? Mina pulled up a complex star chart. She plotted the path of the drone. She calculated the speed of their projectile. It would be incredibly fast. Too fast for the hegemony's defenses to track, she was sure, but it also meant their timing had to be perfect. I have a solution, she said after a moment. I can aim for a point 100 meters to the starboard side of the drone. It will be a near miss. They will feel it. They will see it. They will know we could have hit it if we wanted to. Do it, Mr. Park said. The minutes ticked down. The energy levels climbed into the red zone. Warning messages flashed on Jin's screen about heat and stress. He ignored them. He typed commands reinforcing the magnetic fields, praying the metal would hold. 10 minutes, Mina announced. Her hands were poised over the final execute command. Suddenly, a new alarm blared, a different, more urgent sound. The drone, Mina cried. It's accelerating. It's changing course. It's heading for a lower orbit. A perfect position to scan the entire crater. On the tactical screen, the triangle of light representing the drone moved quickly, diving toward the moon. They know, Mr. Park said, his voice grim. Or they suspect enough. They want a clear picture. We can't wait 20 minutes, Jin yelled. If they see the railgun, the frigate will fire. We have to shoot now. The capacitors are only at 68%, Mina argued. A shot now might not have the speed. It could veer off course. It could hit the drone by accident. An accident is better than our annihilation, Jin shot back. If we hit it, we show them we can destroy their ships. A miss at lower power is a warning. No shot at all is our surrender. Mr. Park looked at the screens. The drone was getting closer. The frigate's weapons were glowing with power. He had to make a choice. Recalculate the firing solution for current power levels, he ordered Mina. His voice was calm, but his hands were clenched into fists. We fire in 5 minutes. Mina's eyes widened, but she nodded. Her fingers flew across the console, entering new numbers. Recalculating. Solution is ready, but the margin for error is tiny. So tiny, Jin ran back to his station. I'm bypassing the safety protocols for the launch sequence. I'm feeding all reserve power directly into the magnets. It might burn out the system, but it will give us one clean shot. The base shuddered. A pipe burst in the ceiling, spraying steam into the control room. A console on the far wall sparked and went dark. They were pushing the machine and the moon itself to its absolute limit. 1 minute, Mina said. Her finger hovered over the key that would send the command. The drone is in scan position. It's starting its sweep. They could see it on the long-range camera, a small insect-like ship, hovering in the blackness above them. A bright green light emanated from its belly, beginning to paint the surface of the moon. Jin, Mr. Park said. Now. Firing sequence initiated, Jin said, pressing a series of buttons. The hum became a deafening roar. The vibration was so strong that tools fell from tables and dust rained from the ceiling. Lights flickered wildly. Projectile loaded, Jin reported. Magnetic sequence is green. All systems. Argo. Mina took a deep breath. She looked at the image of the drone, a symbol of 1,000 years of oppression. She pressed the key. There was no bright flash of light, no roar of fire. There was only a deep, physical thump that felt like the moon had been struck by a giant hammer. The entire structure of the base groaned in protest. On the screen, a simple, solid tungsten projectile, no bigger than a small truck, was launched from the rail. It vanished from their short-range sensors almost instantly, accelerated to a speed that was hard to comprehend. For a second, nothing happened. The only sound was the frantic beeping of damaged systems. Then, on the tactical display, they saw it. The projectile, a tiny, fast-moving dot, crossed the path of the drone. It missed it by exactly 100 meters, just as Mina had planned. The effect on the drone was immediate. The green scanning light shut off. For a moment, it tumbled. Its systems likely scrambled by the shockwave of the projectile passing so close at such an incredible speed. Then it stabilized, turned, and began to retreat quickly back toward the frigate. In the control room, Jin, Mina, and Mr. Park stood in stunned silence. They had done it. They had fired a shot across the galaxy's bow. The communication screen lit up once more. Ambassador Kyle's face appeared. But the cold arrogance was gone. His black eyes were wide. He looked confused. And for the first time there was a flicker of something else, something that looked like fear. The projectile. Kale's voice was a whisper. Our sensors. What was that? Mr. Park took a step forward. He looked at the alien, his own face showing no emotion. That, Ambassador, Mr. Park said, was our new propulsion system. The silence in the control room was thick and heavy. It was broken only by the frantic beeping of a damaged cooling pipe and the sharp, quick breathing of Mina. On the main view screen, Ambassador Kale's face was frozen in a look of pure, uncomprehending shock. The communication line was still open, but the Voran ambassador seemed to have lost the power of speech. Jin was the first to move. He stumbled to his station, his eyes scanning the damage reports. Columns of red text scrolled down his screen. The magnetic coils in Section 4 are overheating. I'm initiating an emergency coolant dump. We've burned out half the primary systems. He typed commands, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The drone is retreating, Mina said, her voice a hoarse whisper. She pointed to the tactical display. The small triangle representing the scout ship was moving quickly away from the moon, back toward the larger icon of the hegemony frigate. It's not even scanning anymore, it's just running. Mr. Park did not take his eyes off Kale's image on the screen. Ambassador, he said, his voice calm and steady, cutting through the tension. You have seen our test. I suggest you recall your drone and stand down your frigate. We would not want any accidents. On the screen, Kyle's black eyes blinked slowly. The confusion on his scaled face was slowly being replaced by a cold, calculating anger. What was that? He hissed. That was no propulsion system. That was a kinetic weapon, a primitive, unguided slug. It was a demonstration, Mr. Park replied, his tone even. A demonstration of a principle your hegemony seems to have forgotten, the principle of cause and effect. You have violated the accords. Kale's voice rose, regaining some of its familiar arrogance, but it was brittle now. You will be punished for this. The silent judge will reduce your moon to dust. As he spoke, a new warning alarm sounded on Mina's console. Her blood ran cold. The frigate. Its main plasma cannon is powering up to full capacity. They're targeting us. They're going to fire. Panic threatened to choke her. They had fired their one shot. The railgun was broken and steaming. They had no defenses. This was it. They had shown their hand, and now the galaxy was going to crush them for it. Jin looked up from his damaged systems. His face was pale, but his eyes were fierce. They're bluffing, he said, though he didn't fully believe it. They are not bluffing, Jin, Mina cried, pointing at the energy signature readings spiking on her screen. That cannon will fire in less than 3 minutes, Mr. Park stood his ground, facing Kale on the screen. If you fire upon us, Ambassador, you will never know what that primitive slug was. You will never understand the technology you so clearly fear. And I promise you, the knowledge of it does not reside only on this moon. Destroy us, and you will only make the secret spread. It will become a ghost, a story that every human in the galaxy will whisper. And one day, someone else will build a better one. Kale's lips pulled back from his sharp teeth in a snarl. You threaten us? I am explaining the situation, Mr. Park said. You came here because you detected an energy signature you could not classify. You are still in the dark. Destroying us will keep you in the dark forever. Is that what you want? The silence stretched. On the tactical display, the frigate's weapon systems glowed with menacing power. 60 seconds. The plasma cannon was almost ready to fire. Mina could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She looked at Jin, and he gave her a small, grim nod. It was a goodbye. Then something changed. On the main communication screen, they saw Kale turn his head, listening to someone off-screen. A low, guttural voice was speaking to him in the Voran language. Kale's expression shifted from anger to frustration, and then to a look of profound irritation. He turned back to the camera. The fury was still in his eyes, but it was now controlled. Contained. The silent judge is standing down, Kyle said, the words seeming to physically pain him. On Mina's screen, the terrifying energy signature of the plasma cannon began to fade. The weapon was powering down. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her legs felt weak. A wise decision, Mr. Park said, though a fine sheen of sweat had broken out on his own forehead. Do not mistake this for mercy, Kale spat. It is curiosity. My science officer is fascinated and appalled. That object you launched. Our long-range sensors are still tracking it. Jin and Mina exchanged a look. They had forgotten about the projectile. In the panic of the frigate's threat, the simple tungsten slug had been hurled from their minds. It was still out there, flying on its perfectly straight course through the empty void, never slowing down. What about it? Mr. Park asked, his voice cautious. Its velocity is constant, Kyle said, and now there was a hint of that earlier confusion in his voice again. There is no engine to fail, no fuel to expend. It does not deviate, it simply goes. Where is it going? Mr. Park allowed himself a small, cold smile. It is going where we aimed it. And where is that? Kale demanded. You have the sensor data, Ambassador, Mr. Park said. You tell me. The communication ended abruptly. The screen went dark. The control room was once again lit only by the glow of their consoles and the flashing red of emergency lights. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hiss of the steam from the broken pipe. They're scared, Jin said, breaking the silence. He leaned against his console, his body trembling with exhaustion and relief. They didn't understand what they saw, and it scared them. They are not used to things they cannot classify, Mr. Park agreed, sinking into a chair. He looked every one of his years. Their entire power is based on controlling complex technology. What we just showed them was brutally simple. They have no box to put it in. Mina was already back at her console, her mind racing. The projectile. They're tracking it. Where is it going? She pulled up the star charts. The firing solution had been calculated in a hurry, just to miss the drone. She traced the line from their moon, past the drone's position, and out into the deep blackness. Her blood went cold for the second time in 10 minutes. Jin, she said, her voice quiet. Mr. Park, look. They gathered around her screen. The straight, unwavering line of the projectile's path extended across the solar system. It didn't curve. It didn't arc. It went in a perfect, relentless line, and it was headed directly for a small, uninhabited asteroid in a neighboring belt. An asteroid that was used by the hegemony for raw material mining. It was registered. It was on all their charts. Will it hit? Mr. Park asked, his voice tight. Mina ran the calculation. The numbers appeared on the screen. Yes, she whispered. In approximately 5 hours and 12 minutes, our projectile will strike that asteroid. The three of them stared at the screen. They had not meant to hit anything. It was supposed to be a warning shot, a show of force. But in their desperation, they had aimed at a ghost, not realizing it had a name and a location in the hegemony's records. They had not just fired a warning shot. They had fired a bullet and it was still flying. And in a few hours, the entire Galactic hegemony would see exactly what that bullet could do. The control room was a tomb. The initial thrill of their defiance had vanished, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The projectile was still out there. It was no longer just a symbol. It was a bomb flying silently through the dark, and they had lost all control over it. Mina could not tear her eyes away from the tracking data. The line on the screen was so simple, so straight. It was the line of a fact, an unavoidable truth. 5 hours, she repeated, her voice hollow. Jin was desperately trying to get a communication link to the asteroid. There has to be a monitoring station, a beacon, something. We can warn them to move any equipment. But his efforts were useless. The asteroid was uninhabited and automated. There was no one to warn. It was just a rock waiting. Mr. Park sat silently, his head in his hands. "We have made a terrible mistake," he murmured. "We wanted to show them we could stand up. Not that we were reckless. This looks like an act of war, an unprovoked attack on hegemony property." The main communication screen lit up again. It was Ambassador Kale. His expression was no longer confused or angry. It was grimly satisfied. He had seen the same trajectory data. "So," Kale said, his voice dripping with cold triumph. "The truth reveals itself. Your propulsion test was a lie. You launched a weapon at a registered hegemony resource site. This is not defiance. It is insanity or stupidity. We did not target the asteroid, Mr. Park said, rising to his feet. His voice was weary. It was an error in our hasty calculations. The shot was meant only as a demonstration. Your error will be quite demonstrative, Kyle replied. We are tracking the object. Our scientists are predicting the impact energy. The numbers are significant. When you destroy that asteroid, you will give us all the legal and moral authority we need to erase your project, your moon, and any memory of your work. He leaned closer to the screen, his black eyes boring into them. You have become a perfect lesson for the rest of humanity. You have shown them that ambition beyond your station leads only to ruin. The screen went dark. The finality in Kale's tone was absolute. For the next few hours, they worked in a state of numb horror. Jin and a small team in environment suits went out to try and repair the Railgun's cooling systems, but the damage was too severe. The machine was a wounded giant, silent and useless. Mina monitored the projectile's relentless progress. It was like watching a clock count down to the end of the world. With 2 hours until impact, a new ship arrived in the system. It was not a warship. It was a large, unarmed hegemony science vessel. It took up a position near the silent judge. Its sensors undoubtedly focused on the doomed asteroid. They're going to watch, Mina said, her voice flat. They're going to record the whole thing. To study it. Why? Jin asked. His face smudged with grease from his futile repair efforts. Why not just destroy us now and be done with it? Because they are afraid, Mr. Park answered. He was staring out the main viewport at the stars. And curious. They want to see the result of the experiment. They want to measure the power of the weapon they do not understand. We are now just lab rats waiting for the shock. The final hour passed with the slow, cruel pace of a nightmare. There was nothing left to do. They gathered in the control room, watching the main screen, which now showed a long-range telescope view of the asteroid. It was a lumpy gray rock, about the size of a small mountain, spinning slowly in the void. It looked peaceful. It had no idea what was coming. 1 minute, Mina announced. Her hand was clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. On the screen, the asteroid continued its slow spin. The stars around it were steady and calm. Then it happened. There was no sound, of course. But the visual was more shocking than any explosion they could have imagined. One moment, the asteroid was there. The next moment, it was gone. It did not explode into a million pieces. It did not flare with light. It simply vanished. A cloud of superheated gas and dust bloomed in the space where it had been, expanding rapidly and then fading into the darkness. The projectile and the asteroid it struck had been converted in an instant into pure energy and vapor. The room was utterly silent. The three of them stared at the empty spot on the screen where a mountain had been. The sheer, clean, absolute violence of it was beyond words. They had known the theory. They had run the simulations. But seeing it was different. It was terrifying. Jin finally spoke, his voice an awed whisper. It didn't explode. It ceased to exist. On their consoles, data began to stream in from the hegemony science vessel. It was sharing its readings with them. The numbers were staggering. The energy release was orders of magnitude greater than a plasma warhead of similar size, and it had been caused by a simple piece of tungsten. The main communication screen activated. Ambassador Kale was there, but he was not looking at the camera. He was looking down, reading a data slate, his body perfectly still. When he finally looked up, his face was unreadable. The arrogance, the anger, the triumph, it was all gone. What was left was a profound and unsettling calm. The data is conclusive, Kyle said, his voice devoid of any emotion. Your kinetic projectile possesses a level of destructive potential that challenges several of our core defensive doctrines. He paused, his black eyes shifting from Mr. Park to Jin, to Mina. He seemed to be seeing them for the first time not as disobedient children, but as something else entirely. Point defense systems are designed to intercept objects with heat signatures, energy emissions, or guidance systems, Kale continued. As if giving a lecture, they can detonate a plasma missile at a distance. They can scramble the electronics of a smart torpedo. They are useless against an inert hypervelocity slug. It moves too fast to track accurately, and there is nothing to detonate. It is just mass. Unstoppable mass. He placed the data slate down carefully. The Galactic hegemony has controlled the galaxy by controlling complexity. Your weapon is simple. It is a lever, a primitive tool, and you have used it to move a world. Kale took a slow breath, a slight hissing sound. A delegation ship from the Hegemony Science Council will arrive at your location in 12 hours. They wish to speak with the architects of this device. The screen went dark, leaving them once again in the silence of the control room. The only evidence of what had just happened was the empty starfield on their main screen. They had not been punished. They had not been destroyed. They had been acknowledged. Mr. Park turned from the viewport. He looked at Jin and Mina, his two brilliant, stubborn engineers who had just changed the fate of humanity with a single unthinking shot. Well, he said, his voice rough with a mixture of fear and a dawning, incredible hope. It seems we have their attention. The 12 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. There was no time to rest. The hegemony was coming, and they could not be found standing in a broken room next to a broken machine. Jin led the repair teams, working until his muscles ached and his vision blurred. They could not fix the railgun completely, but they could make it look presentable. They sealed the burst pipes, replaced the burned-out consoles, and cleared the debris. The giant machine still hummed, but it was a wounded hum, a whisper of its former power. Mina worked on the data. She compiled every simulation, every test result, every line of code that had made the shot possible. She prepared presentations not as a weapon, but as a piece of engineering. She wanted to show them the mind behind the machine, not just the destruction it caused. Mr. Park prepared himself. He practiced what he would say. He thought about the future. He knew this was not just a meeting. It was a negotiation for the future of the human race. Would they be accepted as equals, or would they be seen as dangerous animals that needed to be caged? When the hegemony ship arrived, it was not what they expected. It was not a warship or a grand diplomatic vessel. It was a simple functional shuttle. It landed softly in the crater not far from the base. The sight of it, so close to their secret project, sent a shiver down Jin's spine. A ramp extended and a group of Vorin emerged. They were not soldiers. They wore simple gray robes. They carried data slates and sensor equipment. At their front was Ambassador Kale. His walk was different. There was no swagger. He moved with a slow, deliberate purpose. Mr. Park, Jin, and Mina went out to meet them. The air was cold and thin. The stars were sharp above them. The two groups stood facing each other on the gray dust of the moon. Humans and Vorin, servants and masters. The moment felt heavy with history. Kale's black eyes went past Mr. Park and looked at the railgun. He stared at its long, dark length stretching across the crater. He did not speak for a long time. "Show me," he said finally. His voice was quiet. Jin led them inside to the control room. He explained the basic principles. The capacitors storing power, the magnetic coils that pushed the projectile. Mina showed them the targeting systems, the simple code that calculated the path. They spoke not as soldiers but as engineers. They spoke a universal language of math and physics. The Voran scientists listened intently. They asked sharp, intelligent questions. They were not dismissive. They were fascinated and deeply concerned. They understood the implications perfectly. When the tour was over, Kale turned to Mr. Park. "We have analyzed the data from the asteroid impact. Our projections were correct. Your weapon bypasses every defensive system currently in use by the hegemony fleet." He paused, looking at Jin and Mina. "You have not simply built a new gun. You have made our entire navy obsolete." The words hung in the air. This was the truth they had hoped for, but hearing it aloud was terrifying. "What happens now?" Mr. Park asked. "Do you destroy us to protect your fleet?" Kale shook his head, a slow, deliberate motion. "Destruction is the tool of a limited mind. It is what we would have done yesterday. But today we see a different path." He gestured toward the railgun. "The Galactic hegemony has ruled for 1,000 years by controlling complex technology. We believed complexity was the peak of advancement. You have reminded us of the power of a simple principle. You have shown us that a lever, properly placed, can move a galaxy." He took a step closer, his scales shimmering in the artificial light. The technological accords were created to prevent chaos, to stop young races from creating weapons they could not control. We see now that we made a mistake with humanity. We tried to put a lid on your box. We did not realize your box had no lid. Kale made a strange gesture with his long-fingered hand. It was a formal Voran gesture, a sign of respect from a teacher to a student who has surpassed them. "The accords are hereby amended for humanity. You are no longer a client species. You are a partner. You will share the principles of this technology with our scientists. In return, you will have full access to the scientific knowledge of the hegemony." Jin, Mina, and Mr. Park stood in stunned silence. It was more than they had ever dreamed. It was not just acceptance. It was an admission that they had something of value to teach. "The rulers of the galaxy do not bow to weapons." Kale continued, his voice soft. "We bow to the intelligence that creates them. We bow to the stubborn will that refuses to be caged. We bow to the simple, brilliant minds that look at a mountain and see not an obstacle, but a lever." He then did something they had never seen a Voran do. He bowed, a deep formal bow from the waist. The scientists behind him did the same. It was not a bow of surrender. It was a bow of recognition. As the hegemony shuttle departed, the three humans stood outside the base watching it shrink into the starry sky. The moon was quiet again. The railgun stood silent behind them, a monument to a battle that had been won not with a shot, but with an idea. Mr. Park put a hand on Jin's shoulder and another on Mina's. "You did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You both did it." Jin looked at the stars, no longer feeling like a servant looking up at his masters, but like an architect looking at a new foundation. Mina smiled, a real, genuine smile for the first time in weeks. The weight was gone. The galaxy had given them rules for 1,000 years. Today, humanity had given the galaxy a new law, the simple, unstoppable law of motion, and everything had changed.